And hello, everybody. Welcome again to World History. We are still studying the global tapestry between the years circa 1200 to 1450, and our focus today is on South Asia, which is mostly India, but it's modern-day India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and Southeast Asia, which is Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Indonesia, and they had different names back then. You had mostly the Khmer and the Malacca empires. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at how culture affected this region's development, and one of the big areas of focus will be on the Islam-Hindu conflict. And you have the Silk Roads here. These are very important. A lot of ports all over the place. This is a maritime-based empire here. You can see all the boats. Boats would come from China, go through this region here, and these were controlled very tightly of ships coming in. They would land in India, and then they would head this way and go to Africa, towards Africa. So that's our basic geographic setting. So let's look at the concept here is basically that beliefs and practices, especially in South and Southeast Asia, we're going to focus a little bit more on South Asia, affected the development of states. So when looking at South Asia, we're looking at it in ancient terms, or this era, we're looking at India, and we're looking at the Malaysian Peninsula, Vietnam, and the islands of Indonesia. Muslims rule in the north of India. This is very important. This is the Delhi Sultanate, and this comes in around the 10th century and sets up control, and it's going to be in conflict with the Vijayanagara Empire. And I know I told most of you about the story about the two brothers who came down since they were Hindu, and they converted to Islam. They're sent to the south, and they set up a rival empire in southern India. Okay, but the Muslims have a lot of control, but this area here is disputed. It's really a hot mess, and again, we talked about these religions really not liking each other very much. We've talked a lot about Islam. Let's go a bit into Hinduism, which is a major religion in the world. Many people follow its tenets. And the idea is that basically when you're born, you are going through a cycle of life and death. It's called reincarnation. And you basically are being judged on your present life. So if you exercise cruelty in this current life, when you die, the people you treated cruelly, they're there waiting for you, and you enter the soul of one of them, and you come back in, and you're going to have a life of people being cruel to you. It's about payment. Your soul is what is being transferred, not your body. You have different bodies, and you want to get your soul back up to the heavens and join God or the Brahman. So basically, through reincarnation, your soul seeks to escape from the material world and become one with God, but the pace is slowed down, depends on your karma. And karma is the balance of your life when you die. What is the account look like? And you get good karma by having good dharma, or good deeds in your life. So that's the core of it. And this basically justifies the caste system. If you were a good person, you're going to be in a high caste. If you were a rotten person, you're going to be in the lower caste. And the lowest caste was called the untouchables, and their life was pretty miserable. And I think you can see, if you look at this objectively, it can be somewhat self-serving, because people who made the rules were in the high caste, and a lot of people saw that, and this led to the Bhakti movement. The Bhakti movement, these people were very zealous. They also offered a lot of opportunity for women who did not have a lot of opportunities in India. And it was based on emotional connection with God, and that caste didn't matter so much. Buddhism had talked about that. But the Bhakti movement allowed for Hindus to keep their culture and the cultural glue that Hinduism provided for thousands of years, and still does to this day, within this part of the world, and still see past the caste system. The caste system was finally made illegal, but not until the early 20th century, so this stays a long time. And again, the caste system is basically, it's a structure and hierarchy in Indian society based upon your past life. This does provide a tremendous cultural unity in India and to Hinduism. It serves that part of it well by keeping the culture very cohesive. And Indians also made tremendous impact in mathematics and astronomy. They were scientifically advanced, and there was a fusion of knowledge that happens in the Sultanate, in the Delhi Sultanate, where the knowledge of India is gathered together, and guess what happens? It goes to the west toward Baghdad, the House of Learning. So this is a real conflict. It's going to play out really throughout India's history. We talked about the partition and how even today Pakistan, which would be which would have been the old northern India in the western section, when India gains its independence, they break away from what is now India, and as does Bangladesh. And they still have very testy relationships. The thing to remember is the Delhi Sultanate is the Muslim area of control. The southern part is the Vijayanagara Empire, and again, it's the story of the two brothers who are Hindu. They convert to Islam, probably out of convenience. That's the inference I would draw from it. And then they go back and they convert back to Hinduism, again, because they're good rulers, and they set this conflict up that stays with India for a long time. Eventually, Hindus outnumber the Muslims throughout most of India. The population is overwhelmingly Hindu, but the Muslims had a very strong political hold and on the whole country, because they were in the seats of governance and they were very efficient in governing. But there are a lot of conflicts that we talked about, but both Islam and Hinduism do influence how these areas are governed, and they are governed differently, and they do develop somewhat separate. They don't have a national idea of an Indian state until 1948. Let's take a trip now down to the east, and we're going to be looking at South Asia. And the area we're going to focus on is the Khmer Empire, which is centered in Angkor Wat, which ends up having close to 1 million people living in it during the 13th century, which is quite an achievement today. If you consider that the population of Tulsa and the Oklahoma City are a little bit over 1 million. This was a prosperous city. It was huge, a lot of money coming in. Well, why? Look at all the places for boats to land. Look at that harbor there. Look, and they're connected to the Malaysian Peninsula, and all these boats coming from China, all these boats coming from India, going back and forth, back and forth. And this is a large city that is able to collect quite a bit of money and wealth. So the Khmer, let's look real briefly. The Khmer is based in Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. It lasts for about 600 years, which is a pretty good amount of time. The Vijayanagara Empire is south. It's on the island parts down here. And you also have the Malacca Empire and Kingdom, and they got very rich. Buddhism is the big religion in South Asia, in Southeast Asia. They do go through a period of Hinduism, but they convert to Buddhism and they become more or less largely Buddhist. It still has a tremendous influence in this region of the world today, with the exception of Indonesia, which is the most Islamic area in the world. And why did Islam spread there? Because Islamic traders came there and they traded their culture, and over the time period of about, over the time period when they start getting there in the 8th century, they take root in the community. It brings prosperity. They bring prosperity to the region. So people liked Islam because of the prosperity that it brought with them, and as well as the advancements that they had over other civilizations in technology. So that's what you need to know. You have conflict in South Asia between the Muslim Delhi Caliphate and the Vijayanagara Empire in southern India. A lot of conflict. It's going to stay impact. Eventually, the Delhi Caliphate, when it changes name under what's called the Mughal Empire under Akbar, he does take over all of the area. But as soon as he kind of gets control of it, here come the British, and they start chipping away, and they use that cultural division between Hindus and Islams, between the mass of people who are Hindu and the ruling faction, which is Islamic, and the British really are able to use that as a wedge issue and get a lot of power in India around starting in the 17th and 18th century. That's all for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you in class. Remember, this is no substitute for you reading and you doing your note-taking, particularly your vocabulary, and aligning it to the 6 themes of this course. Have a great day.